Hello and welcome back to anyone and everyone watching. Today I'm going to be going over the 10 worst seasons of 2022 in all of NASCAR. In this list, I combined all three of the top divisions of NASCAR, the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series, and ranked each season relative to the team's performance in whatever series they competed in. Also, my criteria for picking teams that they must have competed in or attempted to compete in at least half the scheduled races for their series with one primary driver. There's not really a clear line in my definition of a primary driver, but for example, I would consider Brandon Brown to be the primary driver for his family team, Brennan Motorsports. Even though a little over halfway through the Xfinity season, he had to let other drivers take over for most of the remaining races due to his lack of funding. But a team like Alpha Prime Racing's 44 car, which had 9 different drivers, would not match my criteria because the most starts a single driver made for the team was 10. Lastly, notice I say worst seasons because when it's all said and done, all the blame does not lie solely on the driver or the team, but rather a mixture of both. And that doesn't necessarily mean the driver or team is objectively bad. If they're on this list, it just means they had a really bad season, but that they can most definitely bounce back from it. I hope that's clear enough. This list isn't perfect by any means, but without any further ado, let's get right into NASCAR's top 10 worst seasons of 2022. Coming in at number 10 is the 07 SS Greenlight Racing team with driver Graf Jr. Despite a decent ARCA campaign with a win in 2018 and a 5th place points finish in 2019, it has been all downhill since he entered the Xfinity Series. He'll always be remembered to an extent as the guy who DNQ'd in both a Richard Childress and Colleague racing car in the same season, but as he has tried to make a career for himself with SS Greenlight Racing and move past that, things have not necessarily gone his way. Even accounting for his bad equipment in 2022, it's reasonable to say that with only one top 10, 5 DNFs due to crashes, and a DNQ, he had a bad season. Some even go further to say that he's in a winning car because when Custer took over the 07 Machina Auto Club, he won the race, and later went on to score another top 5 and 2 more top 10s in only 5 starts. However, when Cole was behind the wheel, he was getting significant technical help from Stewart-Haas Racing, and therefore was just about driving one of their cars. So I'm not taking that into consideration when ranking Graf's season. If I did, he'd be a lot further down the list. Anyway, Graf was announced recently to be parting ways with the team this offseason, so hopefully both parties will be able to improve in 2023. Speaking of Stewart-Haas Racing and Cole Custer, at number 9 is, well, them. Yeah, you know, if Cole is this early on, then there must be some truly horrific seasons coming up, because the 41 team was pretty much only known in 2022 because of how bad they performed. After his third year running full-time for the same organization as Kevin Harvick, who recorded 2 wins, 9 top 5s, and 17 top 10s, and even as Chase Briscoe, who with a year less Cup experience than Custer totaled 1 win, 6 top 5s, 10 top 10s, and a 9th place finish in the final standings, Cole Custer came up with 3 top 10s. On top of that, he had little consistency as he racked up 5 DNFs due to crashes, and I think that somehow, someway, this was an improvement from his statistics in 2021. There's really no question why he'll be back in the Xfinity Series in 2023. I'm sure he'll tear it up again there, just like he did for SS Greenlight Racing and for SHR in years past, but now his future in Cup is very uncertain. In the 8th slot is the first Truck Series team to appear on the list, the number 12 Young's Motorsports team with driver Spencer Boyd. If you didn't pay attention to the Truck Series points all season long, you may be wondering why I'm picking on Spencer, because the team he drives for is far from top-level equipment. Heck, he was even able to win for them at Talladega back in 2019. But upon closer inspection, you'll see that Spencer finished behind both of his teammates, Kaz Grala and Jesse Little, in this year's points. That doesn't sound like too big of a problem until you take into account that Young's Motorsports only fielded one other truck in 2022. Yeah, well, Spencer made 22 starts, Kaz only made 12, and Jesse only made 13. And Spencer finished behind both of them. In a year with not 1 top 10, only 3 top 20s, a DNQ at Talladega, and getting parked in the season finale due to not maintaining minimum speed, it is safe to say he underperformed, even while competing for a team that has a little to no expectations besides finishing races. But this can all somewhat be explained away because he wasn't feeling 100% all season long. Seen only the 2nd race of the year at Las Vegas, he dislocated his shoulder in this wild crash. And to his credit, he was back by the next race and never missed any on-track action due to his injury. That's pretty much an achievement in and of itself, but still, purely results-wise, I cannot say it was a good season at all. It was just announced basically as I was making this, by the way, that they will be back together in 2023, so hopefully they can get back to where they were in their first year together in 2019, which was by far their best statistical year. Coming in 7th is the other SS Greenlight Racing team, this time the 08 with the driver David Starr. Similar to Spencer Boyd, I don't think Starr's season was really that noticeably bad until you take a closer look. In 23 attempts together, the 08 car with Starr only qualified for 19 races, and after a best finish of 11th, an average finish of 26.9, and 3 DNFs due to crashes, it becomes pretty clear that he underperformed, even for his middle to back-of-the-pack team standards. Not to mention he finished 35th at Dover, albeit running because of this bonehead move that directly caused damage to Kyle Weatherman's car and indirectly to Jeremy Clements. If he was able to at least make all of his scheduled races, I would feel a lot worse about putting Starr on this list. But when even Joe Graf Jr. only DNQ'd once, I can't really justify placing him anywhere else. It's yet to be announced whether he'll be back with the team for 2023, but I'm guessing he will be because he was able to get full sponsorship in just about every race, typically sporting the Ticket Smarter logos. Anyway, at number 6 on the list is another truck team, Nice Motorsports' number 44, with driver Chris Wright. At this point, we're getting into the range of drivers that performed so miserably that they were kicked out of their rides mid-season or were announced to not be returning with the team before season's end. For Wright, it was the former, as after the 17th race in a planned full-time season, he had already crashed out 4 times and didn't have anything to make up for it, with 0 top 10s and an average finish of 25.5. Like with Joe Graf Jr. and Cole Custer, some fans might be quick to point out that Chris's teammate Carson Hocevar scored 7 top 5s, including 3 runner-up finishes, 12 top 10s, and even made the playoffs. But because the other full-time Nice drivers, Dean Thompson and Wallace Allen, also did not net a single top 10, I'm going to theorize that all the trucks were not prepared equally, or that really only Carson's was a top priority. If they were all dealing with the exact same equipment, then Thompson and Allen would also be somewhere on this list, but instead I chose to only include the worst and most accident-prone of the 3, Chris Wright. Landing in the 5th spot is the Final Cup team, well besides the dishonorable mentions, and was far and wide the most underachieving of them all. Yes, even a few steps back from Cole Custer. I'm talking about the Petty GMS number 42 team with driver Ty Dillon. Before the season even wrapped up, it was already announced that Ty, who was originally intended to be with the team long-term, would not be returning in 2023. And that decision was pretty well justified, because all while his teammate Eric Jones was able to walk away with a win, 3 top 5s and 13 top 10s, Ty Dillon came up with 1 top 10, and just barely with a P10 of Bristol Dirt. If you're going to put up numbers that bad, you at least need to take care of your equipment, which Ty did at the beginning of the year, only tearing up 2 cars, both at super speedways in the first 18 races. But by the end, he had totaled 60 DNFs due to crashes in 9 total, and with his abysmal 29th place finish in points, the only full-time points earning drivers he ranked ahead of were Corey LaJoie and Cody Ware. This was all really disappointing to me, since I've been a Ty Dillon fan ever since his ARCA days, but now he'll just be competing for Spire Motorsports full-time in 2023 in significantly worse equipment, so his chances of finally getting Cup win have more or less gone down the drain in the foreseeable future. In 4th is the second to worst Xfinity team that met all of my criteria for this list, and that would be the Our Motorsports number 27 machine with driver Jeb Burton. If I was ranking off of results purely, then Jeb wouldn't even be in this video, because there were a few guys like Mike Snyder who also drove for middle-of-the-pack teams that finished below Jeb in the points. But for Jeb, it was a transition from his successful 2021 season to his absolutely insufferable 2022 season that earned him his keep here. After competing for Kaulig Racing just 1 year ago, where he won the Spring Talladega race and recorded 6 additional top 5s, 15 additional top 10s, only 2 DNFs all year long, and a respectable 10th place points finish, in 2022, he got 0 of everything, except DNFs. We knew that the move from Kaulig Racing to Our Motorsports was undoubtedly a step back, but most projected him still to be a threat to make the playoffs and maybe even win another race. But instead, out of every driver who competed in at least 15 races, the only others to have matched him in regard to having 0 top 10s were Josh Williams and David Starr. That is not the company you want to have. To make matters worse, he was one of the most wreck-prone drivers in the series, as he crashed out 6 times. And for Jeb, a lot of it wasn't his fault. He just had some of the worst luck I've ever seen a driver have throughout an entire season, to the point where on paper, it looks like his season was a complete failure. But on the bright side, he was close to a top 10 on numerous occasions, as he finished 11th and 12th twice each, and he finished top 20 in all of the final 8 races of the season. Still, with statistics that unfortunate, I cannot help but put him pretty far down this list. Coming in at number 3 is the number 9 CR7 Motorsports team with driver Blaine Perkins. Considering both that the 9 teams' results were trending upwards with owner-driver Cody Rohrbaugh from 2018 to 2021, and that Blaine Perkins had a rather impressive resume heading into 2022 with 3 West Series wins and a runner-up points finish in 2020, it was extremely shocking to me that they had one of the worst seasons in all of NASCAR. Blaine Perkins caught my attention back in 2021 after a convincing run with Our Motorsports in the Fall Talladega race, in which he won a stage and came home P13. And when I heard he was teaming up with CR7 full-time for the 2022 truck season, I was pretty excited and predicted they would be a sleeper team, definitely not making the playoffs, but putting together at least a few upset top 10 finishes. But after a full season together, they instead ended up looking back on one of the worst seasons in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR, and not in a single good race. And I don't just mean no top 10s, I mean not a single good race, as they totaled 1 top 20, an 18th at Nashville, along with 5 DNF due to crashes, a DNQ at Martinsville, and a horrific average finish of 27.8. I'm not sure what went wrong this past year for CR7 and Perkins, and it has not been announced yet whether they'll be returning for 2023, but both parties deserve a lot better. Perkins still isn't even a bad driver in my opinion either, as on top of his past West Series success, this year in only 5 Xfinity starts with Our Motorsports, he was able to finish P10 at Martinsville. That's one more top 10 than his previously mentioned teammate. But regardless, in 2022, they utterly failed, and their season deserves to be ranked at the 3rd worst in all of NASCAR. However, one truck team managed to do even worse in my opinion, not results-wise, but expectations-wise. And that would be, of course, the number 24 team of GMS Racing with driver Jack Wood. While I let some Nice Motorsports drivers off the hook because their equipment was potentially not equal to Carson Hocevar's, that was most likely not the case with GMS Racing this past season. I say that because they downsized from 5 full-time trucks in 2021 to only 2 in 2022. So I feel pretty confident equal priority was put into both trucks. But while Grant Enfinger took home the win at IRP, 7 total top 5s, 12 total top 10s, and a solid 7th place points finish, Jack Wood did not manage to luck his way across a single top 10. On top of that, he was just about a weekly caution, wrecking out 7 times the most of any driver on this list, which all led to an average finish of 25.2, so bad that before 2022, I wouldn't even think it was possible for a GMS truck driven by anyone with even the slightest amount of stock car racing experience. The only good race he had going all season long was at Nashville, where after qualifying in 10th, he came down on Matt Crafton and crashed himself out on only lap 7. It honestly hurt to watch the 24 truck this season, because after a certain point, it wasn't even funny anymore, and I just genuinely felt bad for all of them, and hoped they could at least make up for their mistakes a little bit with a couple of top 10s to end the season, but that never came. And somehow, some way, after all of that, Jack landed a part-time deal for 2023 with Kyle Busch Motorsports. Make it make sense. But before bracing yourself for a season even worse than that, and far worse actually, let's quickly go through some dishonorable mentions. First is the 47 team of JTG Doherty Racing with driver Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the Cup Series. In their first 14 races in 2022, it was actually looking like they were both going to have a career season, as they had already picked up 5 top 10s, 4 of which were consecutive. And the first of those 4 was Ricky's best race all season, a head-turning runner-up finish at Chase Elliott at Dover. But after only the 14th race of the season and his 4th consecutive top 10, he scored no top 10s the rest of the season and ended up finishing 1 spot below Cole Custer in the final standings. For the next few teams, I'm going to be breaking my own rules a little bit. All of these teams either include a non-primary driver or a team that didn't attempt half the races on their schedule, but nevertheless had some of the worst partial seasons in the sport. First, we have the 34 Jesse Iwuji Motorsports car with their intended full-time driver, Jesse Iwuji himself. While he was able to survive the Demolition Derby Fall Daytona race and brought to a career-best 11th place finish, in his other 12 attempts, the main concern was if he could qualify for the race, and if so, if he could avoid any incidents like these. In the end, he DNQ'd twice, crashed out twice, and held a pitiful average finish of 28.5 compared to primary driver Kyle Weatherman's 21.6. Next is another Xfinity team, Big Machine Racing's number 48 with planned full-time driver Jade Buford. Despite a P8 at Coda and a P14 at Portland, the road course specialist only managed a best oval finish of 22nd in his 9 total races that also saw him crash out 3 times. He was then given the boot after the Martinsville race, only to return once more for the rest of the season. Then there's G2G Racing, who signed Matt Jaskell to drive their bucket of nuts and bolts number 46 truck full-time, but then pulled the rug out from underneath him after only 4 attempts. And lastly, there's Jimmy Means Racing's number 52 team, who I have to imagine was intending to run the full or majority of the Xfinity season as they did in 2021, but with driver Harrison Rhodes, failed to qualify for 4 early season races and withdrew from Auto Club for a whopping average finish of nothing, I guess. But now, for what you've all been waiting for, the worst season in all of NASCAR in 2022, out of any of the top 3 series, out of any teams that attempted at least half the races in their series with one primary driver is Mike Harmon Racing's number 47 team with driver Brennan Poole. And what's that? They only ran 7 races together? Well, that's because they DNQ'd in their other 12 attempts. Oh yeah, Mike Harmon's team was a shadow of its former self this past season, as even in 2021, their 2 full-time car operation with Kyle Weatherman and Bailey Curry fared respectably. Sure, DNQing a combined 7 times between the 2 drivers, but with a top 10 and average finishes similar to other backmarker teams. However, whatever happened the following off-season was certainly nothing good. Out of these 7 times when Brennan impressively managed to get his sandbag with wheels into the show, only 1 time did he ever make it to the finish. Not because he ever crashed, not because the team was starting and parking, but because they legitimately had mechanical failures in every other race. And the 1 race they did make it to the end resulted in a P31 at Atlanta, 4 laps down on the now superspeedway style track. Thankfully, there will be better days ahead for both Harmon and Poole in 2023, as Harmon will be joining forces with Gary Keller Racing this coming season, who previously was combined with JD Motorsports, and Brennan Poole, who I consider at least a solid B-tier driver, will be driving full-time for JD Motorsports. But still, for both the owner and driver, 2022 will be a year they'll see in their nightmares for a long time to come. But that's all I've got to say today. Once again, I mean no insult to anyone in this video, teams or especially drivers. This was just one season, and everyone mentioned has either accomplished a lot previously in their careers or has a lot of time ahead of them to learn and improve their craft. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, as you won't want to miss out on any future videos like these or on my weekly silly season news recaps, where I cover all the off-season news stories for every team, big and small. But yeah, that's all for today, so until next time, peace out.